Welcome back to another episode of That's Business. Today's guest, Dr. Paula Ruffin, is a brand new friend of mine who I have been trying to track down for the last few years after hearing her badass TEDx talk. Before I go through all the greatness that is Paula, let me thank you for being here first.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here and to have met a new friend.
Paula, you are incredible, and I don't want to give away the secret sauce of everything we're going to talk about, but tell us a little bit about you. And then I want to know, have you always been on this journey that you're on right now?
Oh, boy. Tell a little bit about me. So how much time do we have?
Oh, we have up to an hour. So you got time. We'll do the Cliff Notes.
I'll start at the front end and then we can work our way back. I'm a chiropractor. I practice functional medicine. I am a holistic healthcare provider. My office is in New Hudson. I've been in private practice for over 26 years. And my whole goal, my whole platform that I like to stand on and teach and preach is to help people and families to live a much better, more balanced life and teach their kids. We have a crazy epidemic of chronic health issues in our world today. So 50% of all kids have some kind of chronic disease. This is horrible. It is mind-blowing. I can tell by your jaw being agape. And this goes back, and we can get into it a little bit, but my mom raised me with these incredibly healthy habits and lifestyles, and I'm raising my daughter this exact same way. And so really leaving a legacy of health and wellness and healthy habits and lifestyle is more valuable than any amount of money that you can leave your kids. So I think that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as who I am and where I stand. I'm a big community advocate, so I love to rally my community. I'm very involved. I'm on the board of our Downtown Development Authority. I'm the chair of our promotions committee. So anything I can do to rally business owners, entrepreneurs, and the community together, it fills my cup. So this is one of those things I said when I saw your picture captivated me. You had this energy in your face, and I'm like, I got to meet that girl. And so that's what I hope people, listening, I hope if they feel that way after they hear me and my message, I would just invite people to reach out because I would love to meet and connect.
You're incredible. Well, thank you. Tooting my own. My head's going to be too big to get out of this room today, but
never. You need more of it?
I won't say no. No, but your mom was ahead of her time.
100%.
I feel like the last few years, I don't know, even maybe within the last 5 is where we've really taken the whole, let's take our health seriously. But did you know that at the time, or where was that clicking of oh shit, mama knows a little something more? Tell us about that.
Isn't that crazy? So my mom, so this is back in the 70s, and my friends called her a health nut. This was when calling somebody a health nut was kind of cool, but it was super fringy too, right? You're like, oh, we're going to eat quinoa. We didn't have quinoa back then, But, we're Middle Eastern, so our diets were pretty healthy to begin with. And you said you'd listen to my TED Talk, so I invite anybody to go, you can look that up at TEDx Detroit with my name and you'll see that. And that whole story, that inspiration came from my mom because my brother, and this goes to what we're looking at today. My mom was a single mom. My brother was crazy, climbing the walls. He drove everybody crazy. He was a disaster. He was 3 years older than me. Brilliant kid. So my mom was she's single. She's trying to do life and raise kids. And he's making life not easy for anybody. So she takes him to the doctor. The doctor's he's hyperactive. And I'm I'm 8 years old. I'm I could have told you that, it was just crazy. So the doctor tells her that she needs medication for him. Now, this also, we think this is what flagged my video on TEDx Detroit. So I'll give you a little peek behind the curtain. If you go to that video and you look in the comments, and actually TEDx, not TEDx Detroit, they put a disclaimer in that said it was false information. There was nothing to back up. Meanwhile, everything I said in that video, I sent them data and links and studies and everything that said, this statement came from here. I quoted the World Health Organization. I quoted the CDC. This stuff came from all the government entities and they still flagged it. So we think maybe they didn't like the fact that I said my mom brought my brother home, gave him 1 dose of, it was Ritalin. I didn't even mention Ritalin. I was like trying to stay away from brand names and all that stuff. And she said it turned him into a zombie. Mm-hmm. So she found, it was called the Feingold diet. Now, this is back in the 70s, and we didn't have access to Google. And, like how, I don't know, I wish my mom were alive today so I could ask her how she found the Feingold diet. And it's so simple. And I actually just did a live and a pre-recorded video for today that went out on my YouTube channel. And I talked about this, and I'm like, my top 3 rules are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, and colors. And that was Feingold. So it's kind of crazy how that has gotten like ingrained in me, and sugar and other things. But I always tell people, if you can just go without no artificial sweeteners, flavors, and colors, you'll eliminate probably 75% of the processed foods in your diet. So she did that. She eliminated like no more crunch berries. Can you even imagine?
Oh, devastating. Yeah.
No more Pop-Tarts, like none of that. So she eliminated all of it, put my brother into hockey. So she cleaned up our diets. She made him, even though he was pretty like crazy, like rode his bike and all that stuff, she wanted to give him some structure. So he had to learn something. So that was like getting the brain neurons fired up and learning a new skill, the physical activity, having a regular schedule. And then, of course, marrying that with diet and lifestyle. And, he runs a multi-million-dollar construction company today. Like he's not hurting. So this is where we're at today. So just going back, that was just how I was raised. And she was teaching us to read food labels at 8 years old, would take us grocery shopping, got us involved. She's like, okay, read that label. And I'm like, monosodium glutamate. Does that sound like food? No. Can we buy it? No. And we'd put it back. Like she taught us that. That's what people need to do today, is that take your kids and teach them. And then you won't have the struggles and the chaos of, okay, kids, this is why we eat the way we do. Because so many parents make excuses for allowing their kids to eat shit. And I know you said I could swear on this podcast.
Yep, so sure did. Still stand by that.
Yeah. So that's the legacy, right? It's like, look at the legacy my mom created for me. I've raised my daughter with those same values. She is a mini me when it comes to food and toxins and healthy eating and healthy living. And she teaches her friends. So I see the legacy firsthand in what it did for me and then what it's doing with my daughter. And so many parents, were racing from the baseball field to the hockey stadium to, wherever. And fast food is, that's what we're leaning on. And it doesn't have to be that difficult. And you're actually doing more damage to your kids than you are. You should be teaching them how to do these things and still be able to live a healthy lifestyle.
Now, I know this is probably the number one thing you get back talk on but Paula, it's so much effort and it's so expensive to do it. So those people that say that, what is your response to that?
I love that question. And I'm so glad you asked it. I'll give you 2 quick examples. Every week I go to Whole Foods and I buy a giant pack. You could do whatever kind of, chicken breast or chicken thighs. I like the chicken thighs. So a giant pack of boneless, skinless, organic chicken thighs. I bring them home. I throw them into a bowl. I season them up with lemon, salt, pepper, garlic, maybe an herb. Throw them in the fridge for 24 hours. They either go into the cast iron skillet the next day. Like I cook the whole pack. This week I grilled them. And that's our snack. Like we eat that, or I bring it to the office and I keep it in my freezer at the office. So when I need a quick, healthy protein snack, it's at the ready. It took 3 minutes, if that, to throw it into a bowl and season it. And then another 10 minutes to cook them. So when you're talking about it takes too much effort, that's an excuse. I did a video, which I have to still edit. We talked about video editing yesterday. I do a lot of bone broth and talk about the health benefits of bone broth. And I showed all the vegetables that I had cut for the broth. It took me 30 minutes to cut up everything. It went into a pot for 5 hours. I strained it and I had broth. Like it takes some effort. You have to do something. You have to be willing to do something. But to say it's too expensive or takes too much time or effort, it's an excuse. It's just an excuse because you're being lazy. And I'm just calling everybody out. So if you are making that excuse, there are ways to do it. You got to have a little bit of effort and a little bit of willpower up front.
Now, for someone that maybe wants to do this, just feels overwhelmed, maybe they have kids at home, maybe they're a single mom, maybe it's whatever, they know they need to make changes, whether it's overwhelming to go to a gym or just where to get started, who's good at information. What are your tips to get started on all of this?
So elimination is part of it, right? So no artificial sweeteners, flavors, colors. But then people are like, well, if I eliminate that, what can I eat? So then I just say, build your meals. So a good healthy protein, always fruits and vegetables, and then maybe like some carbohydrates. So whether that looks like, rice or potatoes. I try to personally avoid, I don't do a lot of pasta. Now, I don't have a gluten intolerance, but I feel bloated. I never feel full. I get hungry really fast. So if you can top heavy your protein in a meal, it takes longer to digest. And so you're not hungry as often or not hungry, you can stave off hunger for a lot longer. So maybe you won't have nighttime cravings, but you have to make that shift first, right? So you have to make that decision. Okay, I do a lot of, I have people keep a food journal for me. And so they'll bring me their food journal and I'm like, there's hardly any protein in there and there's hardly any vegetables. Like we are in such a carb crazy world. And I know there's people listening and they're like, oh my God, I love my bread. I love my crackers. I love my pasta. And that also is usually a sign that you have a gut imbalance. So again, it comes down to decision and action. Some people will make the decision, I want to feel better, and they'll take action on it. And then other people will say, I want to feel better, but that's too much effort. And I think it was back in the 80s, there was a commercial for, it was either a fuel filter or an oil filter. I can't quite remember. We'll call it an oil filter. It was more expensive than all the others. And so the commercial was basically saying its oil filter was better than the others because of X, Y, and Z. It would make your engine last longer or make your oil last longer, whatever that was. The tagline was, pay for it now or pay for it later. So you can have that upfront expense by paying for that oil filter now, or you can have the downstream expense of having to like rebuild your engine or get new spark plugs, or I don't know how engines work. I'm just kind of talking my ass right there. But
that's right.
Yeah, I think so. But you get the idea. And that's how our health is, right? So we can pay for it now. So spend a little bit of money on your healthy food, your produce, which, by the way, is cheap now because it's farmers market season.
Yep.
Or you can pay for it later in the form of surgery and drugs, medication, lifestyle, getting cut off from your lifestyle. So again, it's a mindset.
And I don't even know if I shared this with you, but prior to meeting you, I actually went through a functional nutritionist myself because I went through every freaking test. I would eat healthy, I'd feel like crap. I'd eat unhealthy, I'd feel like crap. Like there was no rhyme or reason to what my issue was. So I've had this lingering cough since I think middle school. I cough my booty off at night, like to the point where anyone that's in the same house as me is like, are you throwing up? Like, are you okay? And nobody can figure this out. So we go through all these pieces. We do an elimination, like you said, and come to find out it's a gluten intolerance. And she said the same thing. It was like, try to stay away from sugar and try to be 95% gluten free or whatever. So interesting enough, now I still try to follow it. Like she's been great. My schedule just sucks, but it's so helpful. Like it's so helpful to have an outside perspective like yourself who just like understands, you're not telling people to like change everything and spend 10 hours a week cooking. Like that's obnoxious. You run your own business. You have your kiddo. Like you have to do this too. You understand that. And you're going into an office. You're not even remote. So it's a lot easier than people think. And one more quick story, and I swear we'll get back to you.
No, that's...
I go for my labs like in, where do I go? I think I go March, April every year, do the annual, whatever. They do the testing and she sent me a bunch of like tests to get done. And glucose rang slightly. Now, if you've ever met me, you would not think I have a glucose problem. Like I'm not a sugar person. I'm not like, I could live without sweets for the rest of my life. But it rang and the doctor said, okay, just maybe watch it. I send those results to the nutritionist. She's like, no, like this is going to be a later problem. Like we need to solve this now. They're not going to flag you until you need to be on medication, and then it's too late. So for my situation, I'm sure you've had a lot of clients that go through that, but what's been your experience, the difference between what you recommend to people that work with you versus what's different on kind of like the traditional healthcare side?
Okay, I'm going to add one layer to that. So let's put this into buckets. So we have people like you who say, I tried and tried and tried. I did this, I did that. So it's all of those people in that particular bucket. Maybe they dabbled. And I'm not saying you dabbled, but the problem is that there was no clear, concise way of finding the answers for what you had or getting to a resolution. So it was like, I did this for a little bit, I did that for a little bit, nothing seemed to help. Then there's the medical model, and then there's functional medicine, which I feel like as functional medicine docs, we're usually the last resort for people. So let's go to the bucket of you're searching, something's wrong. And those two paths, the medical path and that I've been searching forever path, those intersect for years. This is an old stat, but I feel like maybe it's gotten less because functional medicine has become more popular. But about 10 years ago, there was a statistic that said it takes people about 10 years to get an actual diagnosis that affects the root cause of their chronic disease. So like I say, I feel like that's a little more, it's a little bit more mainstream for functional medicine at this point. So you go in and you're looking at all these things and your doctor says, okay, we're going to do these labs and you're fine. It's fine. It's only a little bit elevated. The problem with the traditional lab work is that a little bit elevated is a lot out of range on functional medicine ranges. So functional medicine uses much tighter ranges, as you probably discovered. And traditional medicine has these really wide ranges. So that's correct, is that if you have something that finally goes out of range on a traditional lab, you're now in a clinical state versus being in a subclinical state, which is much easier to manage through diet, nutrition, and lifestyle. So sometimes when you fall so far out of the way, it's an emergency situation and you may need medication at that point, but we're trying to keep you from there. The other piece of that, and these are all the scenarios that happen before I even see people. Okay, so you go to the doctor, you're told you're fine, but you're like, I still feel like crap. I know I'm not fine. And then you go back out to the internet and you're trying to Google and you're trying to figure out, and you join this workshop and that, following that video and this guru one day, and it's just a shit show. Let's take gluten as an example. So one of the most common things is, well, I did the gluten-free thing and it didn't work. That is probably the most common. It sounds like a title for a video that I need to do. So
that'll be the title of your episode. There we go.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did the gluten-free thing and it didn't work. That might grab people's attention. So what happens in that respect is that people don't understand how multifaceted it is. Now, you probably do because you've been through it with a professional. So eliminating is 1/4 of what needs to be done. So you have to eliminate the insult. You have to know what the insult is to begin with. I've been doing this for 26 years. I can pretty much guess, yes, you should eliminate gluten and dairy, which is what I pretty much advise for most people. But if you just do that, what happens, a lot of people are like, well, I did the gluten-free thing. And then they go to the gluten-free aisle of the grocery store. And they just replaced their gluten shitty diet with a gluten-free shitty diet. It's like unhealthy vegans. I've had vegans in my office and they're like, I'm vegan. And they have, I didn't mean to say that like my 19-year-old daughter.
I love it. I'm here for it.
Okay. But I'm like, if you're going to be vegan, you better not be eating Oreos, like period. Okay. I'm digressing. So you're taking one processed food diet and replacing it with another. And that's not okay. There's seed oils, which are massively inflammatory, damaging to the gut microbiome, damaging to the brain, to the cardiovascular system. They actually contribute to chronic disease. All that stuff lives in those gluten-free foods. and they have artificial sweeteners in them and additives, and it's garbage. So if you've gone to the gluten-free aisle and said gluten-free didn't work, then that's, strike number one. Then the next thing is, after you eliminate gluten properly, you have to then replace it with, again, high levels of protein, healthy fruits and vegetables, maybe minimal grains, again, rice. I love yellow potatoes because they're low in carbs, comparatively speaking to other potatoes, and they're not as impactful from an inflammatory perspective like grains would be. So you have to then replace it. But in the process, you have to come in and strategically kill off the bad bacteria that's been there, that has been allowed to overgrow because you've had this gluten intolerance for so many years. You also get damage to the gut lining. And what happens is we have these, it's called tight junctions in the gut, and they're like a little mesh. Think of like a really fine mesh, but now you have holes in it. They've been torn apart. And food particles are now allowed to seep into your bloodstream. And when that happens, you now get inflammation because the body's like, wait, we shouldn't have tiny peanut butter and jelly sandwiches running around the bloodstream, right? So it goes and it attacks it, and then you get inflammation, and now suddenly you have an autoimmune issue. So we have to heal the gut. We have to destroy the bad bacteria. We have to heal the gut up. Then we have to come in and replace the microbiome with good, healthy bacteria that we know is actually going to serve you. So you can see how just eliminating gluten and how so many people, they don't have the full picture. I always applaud people. I'm like, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you went there. I'm glad you were able to do that, because that takes a lot of willpower to be able to eliminate a major food group like gluten or dairy. So great, bravo, but you're missing 75% of the picture in order to get you well. So it wasn't that gluten-free didn't work. It just means that you didn't have all the information. And that's where working with somebody who's in functional medicine can help guide you the rest of the way there to help make sure that you manage it properly. So those are, like you say, basically the three buckets. And I usually see people at the end of their journey of, I've been here, I've been there, I have a patient right now who is clearly leaky gut. She has cystic acne, horrible acne. She's been dealing with it for many years. She went on Accutane. And if you know anything about Accutane, it is a horrifically dangerous medication.
I went on it.
You went on it?
In college, yep. Because they had no other solution for me. It was every medicine, everything. You could go into the aisle of any store. I tried every single thing. I mean, this is years ago we're talking. So
yeah, so that goes back to you. This has been years for you, right? And so what did the Accutane do for you?
Oh, that was the only thing that helped, but it dried the hell out of my skin where I was miserable. And the weird side effects, and mind you, I'm how old are you? 18, 19 years old. And the side effects, I was like, I feel like I'm getting a bloody nose. I turned into a psychopath for about 45 minutes. And I forgot whatever weird thing. It was like 3 weird things. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's normal. Like, they made me sign my life away. They made me like, you're going on birth control. And I'm like, I mean, not to get personal, but I was like, I'm not having sex yet. And they didn't care. They're like, you're going on birth control. You're doing all these things. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And I think I was 17 when I got put on it. So, yeah.
But it actually causes birth defects.
Yep.
So it's like, are you kidding me? And it causes infertility. Like, it's a horrible, horrible medication. And that's all they have, right? So, and acne is not an outside-in approach. Like, you have a massively altered gut microbiome that needs to be repaired. And if we just do that, and you've got incredible food allergy and food sensitivity issues. So if we can get to that point, you don't need that stuff. You don't need those dangerous medications. And to your point, yeah, they're like, oh, that's normal. That is not normal. You're not deficient in Accutane. Like, come on.
Yep. Oh, it's crazy too. And it's funny looking at the skin differences, because I have been on a very strong, like, oh my God, I look back at pictures. I'm like, oh, you poor baby. But the craziness about, and I'll never forget this story either, where my ex-boyfriend, still very good friends, but we were on a trip with his family, and I go to his cousin, who I actually still talk to. And I'm like, Cassie, do you have a gluten issue? And she's like, no, why? I'm like, your arms are strawberried and bumpy, like you have a gluten issue. And she's like, no, you're crazy. She texts me a year later. She goes, what the fuck kind of like sorcery. I've had issues. The doctor said I'm celiac and I have to go gluten-free now. And I'm like, yeah, I've been there. Like, your girl knows skin issues without being a dermatologist because I have so much PTSD from it. So
Preach, girl.
It's so crazy because it's just small things. But now I notice, and I'll be honest, like, I was bad over the weekend. I did not do my gluten-free like I'm supposed to, but I can see the difference in the mirror. I feel bloated. I look like I'm 3 months pregnant. I like start getting different, like my acne starts popping up, but it's just like the education around it. It's not as scary as it needs to be. And there's badass people like yourself who, and talk to us about your YouTube videos because they are so educational and so fun. But tell us about those because I feel like you are the only one doing these videos in your field, period.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So,
of course,
shameful plug, please go subscribe to my YouTube channel.
It'll be in the show notes. Go to the show notes.
Thank you. Thank you. And listen, I appreciate that segue into that because my goal through my YouTube channel, first of all, I started it because I needed a way to answer all the common questions that I get asked on a daily basis.
Right.
And so it's become a really great archive and a great library. And I really wanted it to be this platform for education for people who go searching for health and wellness, but I'm giving you the truth. You know, I'm not here to sugarcoat anything, right? I have a friend of mine, she always says, I'm not a bakery. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything.
I say, I'm not going to sugarcoat your career advice. We're stealing that.
There you go. You can steal it. You can totally steal it.
Amazing.
So the YouTube channel has been great because also what I find is that I want to be able to give people all the simple ways that they can implement healthy lifestyles, whether it's, you know, sleep, food, mindset, exercise, movement, any of that, chiropractic. I want to give you all of those ways that you can live a healthy lifestyle because this is how I live and I have a great life. I feel great.
You look incredible.
Thank you.
Skin is impeccable. Yeah.
And so my goal is how much information can I provide to people that they can implement? Like if people just took all the information that they found on my site and implemented a little bit of everything on there from, again, food, movement, sleep, mindset, chiropractic, you could probably solve 90% of your issues. So the idea is that let me give you all this really cool stuff. And then when you can no longer figure it out yourself, when you can no longer keep it together or know the path, then you can come and hire me. But that was my goal. It's like, you don't have to hire me straight away. Go to my channel, follow the things. And then if you can't do it, now you know you've trusted me, you see the information. And if you're looking for somebody to hire as a nutrition coach or even need a chiropractor, then now you're like, oh yeah, I know her. We've already gone through all of these things and now I can, you know, now it would make sense to work together. So that's really the goal, is just trying to provide as much value out there for people who are still in a place of, I want to try to figure it out myself. Well, here's all the information.
Awesome.
YouTube has been amazing. I've built a incredible community over there. It's really, really a cool place to be. So come and follow.
Amazing. Now, because I have to address the chiropractic side of you, because there are a lot of naysayers in chiropractic as well.
Yes, we're a bunch of cracks.
Yep. I don't even know if I can ask this effectively in one question. But for those people that are like, oh, chiropractic is bullshit, it's not real, it doesn't work, like, what do you say to all the haters out there? Let's just start there.
So they're great questions. So, yeah, I've heard all of it. I will invite everyone to watch my Thursday live cast on YouTube, Thursdays at 1:00 Eastern. It's called Chiropractic is Sexy. And of course, you can see right there.
Yes, I was wondering what that was. Yes, love it.
So that is the name of the show. And here's what I say. So we are, as humans, I'll give you kind of in a nutshell of what chiropractic is. So in our world, we have physical stressors, chemical, and emotional stressors, right? The physical stressors are the obvious. Maybe it's some kind of a frank injury, a slip, trip, fall, a car accident. Maybe you play impact sports. Or the sheer act of sitting all day. That is a physical stress. Then we have emotional stressors. So job stress, life stress, financial stress, family stress, traffic. I mean, there's so much emotional garbage in our world, right? So we have emotional stress. That wreaks havoc on your nervous system. And then there's chemical stress. Chemical stress, that's the food that is adulterated. So if we're not, if you're making poor food choices, now you're really adding to the chemical stress. There's toxins in our environment. We put toxins on our skin. The average woman leaves the house and she's put on over 250 chemicals on her body from the time she woke up in the morning. It's terrible. We have all of that. Your nervous system is the very first thing to form in utero. Literally within the first 2 weeks after a sperm and an egg come together, the miracle of life is that the brain and the spinal cord are the first thing to form because they have to control and direct everything else to grow so that we look like this, right? I mean, it is a absolute freaking miracle that we all come out with 2 arms, 2 legs, and everything's symmetrical, right? And then there's the occasional birth defect. We can talk about why that happens, but maybe that's for another podcast. So what chiropractic does is in a world of physical, chemical, emotional stressors, when we move out of alignment or our nervous system gets stressed, we are constantly in a state of fight or flight. So we're constantly stressed. Our adrenals are kicking in. It's like we're constantly running from a saber-toothed tiger. And actually, one more analogy, think of it as you're sitting in a room in the dark and I ask you to read a book. And you're like, I got to turn the light on. I'm like, I can't. This is what your nervous system is hearing and seeing is this darkness. It doesn't get a proper clear signal. So when you get adjusted, and chiropractors are very skilled in finding the exact places along the spine that need correction. So things don't move. They're locked up and they're bound by scar tissue and muscles and tendons and ligaments, and there's arthritis. So we have to go in there and create mobility, which improves blood flow and nerve flow and helps the scar tissue to heal up properly and get your spine moving better so that it's less stress on your nervous system. And now what we do is we start to turn the light up in the room. You can now read that book. Your brain cannot communicate with your body properly. And when it does that, it can have its own healing destiny, which is what your body is designed to do, is heal itself. We can all agree that when we cut our finger, our body, our innate intelligence heals our skin, not the Neosporin and the Band-Aid, right? So this is what chiropractic does. We release pressure on the nervous system so your body can have a clear signal to now start to heal itself. It literally is miraculous. I have a woman who I'm working with who's got long COVID. She's my age, 57. She's got a lot of neurological issues that came on suddenly about a year ago. I noticed one of the first things that she sits in the chair and she does this kind of floating thing and she floats off to her right side. And I had to explain that because I realized that this is going to be on audio. So she would lean and float. And she didn't know she was leaning and sort of leaning off.
Wow.
And so she's only been adjusted. I think today was her 3rd time. And her son came with her. And he goes, I don't know what's going on, but he goes, I've been watching her. She's walking better. She's not migrating or leaning. She's sitting up straight. And she even told me, she said, I feel like I'm thinking better. Because she knows what she wants to say, but she's unable to speak the words. She can talk, right?
Right.
But it takes her a minute to connect those dots. She goes, I actually feel like I'm thinking more clearly. This is 2 freaking adjustments. So, when people are like, chiropractors are quacks, or I've had people say, I don't believe in chiropractors. I'm going to have a t-shirt made. I'm going to drop a truth bomb and an F-bomb. The front of the shirt is going to say, I don't care what you believe in. And the back of the shirt is going to say, I change fucking lives. So
I love it. I love it.
That is my shirt. So yeah, come and sit in my office for a day and then tell me chiropractic doesn't work. Listen to the stories that people say. And the next time you're like, my neighbor's cousin's first wife's removed dog got amputated by a chiropractor. I don't know, like these crazy stories come out of the woodwork and you're like, if we were killing people, we wouldn't be in business.
Right.
My malpractice is $1,000 a year. Do you think if I were killing and stroking people out, that my malpractice would be $1,000 a year? Compare that to my uncle, who's an orthopedic surgeon who pays $250,000 a year in malpractice. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
God.
We are trying to keep people. We started this conversation, I think, off camera. We need to keep people out of the hospital. And the only way to do that is to develop a holistic lifestyle where you tap into your body's ability to heal, perform, create greater vitality, and get rid of all the garbage that is only serving the drug companies and the medical model. So can I drop the mic on that one?
Hell yeah. I'm like, gosh, do I even want to follow up with another question after that? I don't know. That was so good. Now, my favorite thing I've seen or heard, and I love what you do. It took me a little bit to see it. Oh, I threw my back out actually on the 4th of July a few years ago, which is why I saw a chiropractor. So the boys were whipping us around on the rat tubing and hit a wave. I couldn't move. Like I couldn't move after. I was like, I broke my back, I swear. Chiropractor fixed it. I went for the first time.
You're like, might as well.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't get worse. And then I woke up one day, couldn't move. Like I threw my back out because sleeping's very hard.
Yeah.
And fixed it. Like that was the only thing that fixed. Did I almost cry when he adjusted me? And I was like, oh, that hurt. But I could move my neck for the first time in 3 days. Or I was like, oh, people say this is such a scam. I didn't tell him one day what hurt, what was out of whack. He found it, fixed it, good to go. And it was something so small, like in the weird spot in my back. So I love what you do. I need to get back to going to my chiropractor because I haven't been in a while. But for people that say, this is my favorite, and I want to see what you will say to this, but going to a chiropractor caused me to have a stroke. I've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
How?
Okay, so that goes back to what I was just saying.
Mm-hmm.
When people say that, I mean, I've been doing this 26 years. I've not met one person directly. It's always hearsay.
Yep.
It's never the direct person.
Never.
Also, you have a greater percentage, greater risk of having a stroke when you go get your hair done and you tip your head back for those 10 minutes that you're getting your hair washed. That puts more stress on the carotid arteries than anything because it's actually, you're tipped back and it's causing decrease in blood flow.
Oh.
So are hairdressers being accused of stroking people out? I don't know. And if that happens, that, there could be, I don't know what I keep looking for documented cases that the chiropractor actually caused a stroke. It's quite common that people who have severe cardiovascular disease, so I've had patients, I will take their x-rays and I've seen their carotid arteries calcified. Knowing they are a ticking time bomb, I will not adjust their neck because I'm not going to be that person that gets accused of stroking them out when they were on the verge of a stroke to begin with. And I have one patient who was like that, and I would only use, he was like, no, adjust it. And I'm like, I am not. No. And I use an activator, which is just a little, it's a little clicky device. Yeah. It's non-force, doesn't put any force into the spine, but sure enough, he ended up, after probably a year of care, under my care, he started having stroke-like symptoms, went to the hospital and had to have he was 90% blocked in both arteries. Now, if I had been adjusting him traditionally, I would have been accused of stroking him out, wouldn't I?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's typically the scenario around those stories, I guess. So for somebody like me, I'm like, I see the calcification. I ain't touching you. Yeah, that is not going to happen. And I'm going to talk to you about what we need to do to start to decrease your risk of cardiovascular issues, because I know you're a ticking time bomb. So, yeah.
I love that.
I thought you were going to ask me the question, once somebody goes to the chiropractor, they always have to go. That's another myth.
That's another good one. Let's address that. Let's hear that one. Yeah.
Once you go to the chiropractor, you have to marry one, is how people will say that, right?
They'll never tell you, you always need me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you always need me. I call it job security, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason that people say that, so going back to my original statement about physical, chemical, emotional stressors, we're not going to 100% fix you. What does that even look like, right? So think about it. Let's say you decide, I'm going to start eating healthy again. I want to lose 10 pounds. And then you lose your 10 pounds. You've been eating super healthy and, exercising. And then you lose the 10 pounds and you're like, well, it worked. I'm going to go back to my old ways. So what in the world do you think your nervous system's going to do when you go back out and you start running from the saber-toothed tiger again? Like, it's going to get stressed the F out. So people recognize, and listen, nobody's putting a gun to your head to make you be here.
Nope.
On the regular. But people recognize that by being here, it allows them to perform better, to think better, to relate better. It just is all the things. They sleep better. They move better. I had a guy early on in practice, and he was in so much pain, and he didn't even realize how much pain he was in. He said, my wife was ready to divorce me. I was like, ha ha, kind of the nervous laugh. He's like, no, I'm serious. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, I was in so much pain. I didn't even realize how mean I was being to my wife and kids. And she was ready to serve me with divorce papers. And you saved my marriage.
Add that to your resume.
Right? I know. Chiropractic saves marriages.
I'd read that article. I'd be like, what?
It's awesome. So I've got another patient. He's been a patient of mine for 20 years. He's a farmer. He comes every 2 to 3 weeks. And in the past year, he came in and he started telling me about some weird symptoms he was having. And I was like, we need an MRI. Like, I sent him back to his primary care physician. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. He started getting worse. Turned out he had severe stenosis in his spine. He was getting lightning-like pain down his legs, like he was an inch from surgery. And he goes, what do you need me to do to keep me out of surgery? I said, I need you here 3 times a week again. So he was on a maintenance plan. He's a farmer. He got run over by a tractor also when he was a kid. Like, he's very active and he runs his own business and it's all the things. So he's like, okay. And then I also sent him to a friend of mine, another chiropractor who does decompression, spinal decompression or traction. So between the two of us, we managed him. And it's been about a year now. And he comes twice a week now. It's been a road. And I was using cold laser on him too for the stenosis. He's no longer having the pain. He's got the strength back in his legs. He doesn't have the lightning-like shocks, he would call them, weakness. He's back to full movement. So sometimes life throws you more than you think, physical, chemical, and emotional. And we got to step it up, right? So yes, he chose to come to me regularly for 19 years. And then this past year, he was like, keep me out of surgery. Okay, got it. And we put it into high gear and we did it. So this is how things ebb and flow, right? We change effing lives.
Exactly. Oh, now we're not going to say fuck after you've been saying it the whole episode.
Okay. We change fucking lives.
I just got to give you shit because I can. I'm obsessed with you. But it's interesting because it's the education behind it. And I think we're like, toughen up. And especially men, like, be a man and do this and do that as a society. And it's like, once you feel good, it's like a drug. Like, oh my God, I want this feeling more. At least that was the case for me of like, oh, I know when something's off, or I know when, and I don't mean to like keep making this about myself, but it's just like, it's so transformational. Like, you can't go back to feeling like crap. And my dad is one of those, only sees the chiropractor when he can't move and he could barely walk now. And he's way too young to be that way.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, I can't move. Like, I'll go now. It's like, no, regular maintenance. We don't get this.
Well, let me ask you this question, because that goes along with, why you would go regularly is, and you alluded to this earlier, but I really want people to be clear about this, is that, are you now more in tune to your body because you've tapped into the power of your nervous system?
Oh, 1000%. I mean, I've torn a ligament in my ankle. I played 3 sports growing up. Like, my ankles are trash. Like, so if I get a pedicure, they can't even touch it. I scream. Like, it's bad. And I've like, even my chiropractor was like, okay, that's like an even worse issue, but gave me different movements to do that I still practice and still try to work on. Like, I could crack my ankles on command. It's really disgusting, but we're working on it.
All athletes, all former athletes, yes.
So bad. I'm like, I'm too young to be going through this. People are like, wait till you're in your 60s. I'm like, we're just not going to get there yet. But anyways.
Don't let people cast that over you.
Don't.
Let me just tell you that. Yeah. Don't say that to me, okay? Because I'm 57, still running circles around a lot of people. So,
Yeah, and you don't look at, not that it's any, I hate people around ageism, but it's like, no, I would never guess, because I had to creep on you after your TED Talk. And I'm like, how have you been practicing 26 years? That math ain't math in there. And you have a 19-year-old, or whatever she was, 16 at the time. I'm like, yeah, math ain't math in there, unless you had her when you were like 15 or 16 yourself. But it's so interesting because even like if my wrist is out, or if I know I've been at my computer, or like my eyes, because we stare at screens all day, of just like, oh my God, I need to put like my blue light glasses on, which people love and hate. But I'm like, no, they make a difference. And it's just so in tune and it's so interesting. Or I'm like, oh, Angela, you haven't gotten up from your desk in 4 hours. Go on a WALK. Can't say that word because someone will get a little excited. So, yes, she's right underneath me. Yeah. It's like any educational piece. Once you know about the dyes in food, once you know about, hey, I can sit at my desk and like twist my ankle a certain way and stretch it while working, great. Like it's so minute things that you could do mindlessly that I just encourage anyone listening, like, please reach out to Paula and just start the journey. I wish I would have started sooner had I not had a friend that was like, listen, talk to Seema. She's great. She's changed my life with being a functional nutritionist. Because I was just like, man, I did my work. I'm done. Like, I didn't know where to start.
Yeah, it's never over, right?
Right.
And it builds on the next. And also understand that it's not going to be perfect.
No.
And my ending line in my TED Talk was, start today, then start again tomorrow. That's just how it needs to be. I mean, I got sick a few weeks ago. I'm still dealing with a lingering cough from it. I'm not perfect either, but I am living my life at least 90%, if not 95, whatever, of what I'm trying to teach and inspire people to do. So I look at it like, if you really have a good heart-to-heart with yourself and your nutritional tank is empty or even half full, like it should be overflowing. So that could be autoimmune issues, gut issues, mental health issues, physical, chronic health, any of that, hormonal issues. That is a low tank. You have to fill your tank till it's overflowing so you have the energy to be able to handle things like any kind of sickness that might come along, and then just keep filling it. Just don't stop filling it.
Oh, you're amazing. Well, as we wrap this up, I mean, you've given so much great information for people to start, but what advice do you have for listeners?
This is something I heard. There's 2 best times to plant a tree. The first time was 10 years ago. The second time is today. So just start somewhere. People will say, I don't know where to start, or I don't know what to do, or they get frustrated because one day meat's bad for you, the next day it's not. So you also, though, know that piling down a bag of Cheetos isn't good for you either. So just because you get frustrated with the confusion of information out there, you ultimately know what you should not be doing. So start there. And then up your protein, get moving. If you have problems with sleep, we need to fix that. But really, this becomes about the legacy. Don't let your kids grow up in this world of chronic disease, and leave them something greater that they can give to their kids when they grow up.
Paula, thank you so much. You have been absolutely incredible. This has been a blast. For those of you listening, if you want to check out Paula's YouTube videos, work with her, anything at all, head to the show notes. And as always, tune in again every Tuesday for another episode of That's Business.
If you're looking for a career change and you're not sure where to start, the Resume Rescue can help. Sure, there's no such thing as the perfect fit for everyone, but here at the Resume Rescue, we're on a mission to find the perfect solution for you. Whether it's changing careers, updating a resume, learning LinkedIn, or practicing interviewing, we have you covered. Find us online at theresumerescue.com and find all of our contact info in our show notes.